Ultimate Fighting Championship fans have been left scratching their heads after Jon Jones, arguably the greatest light heavyweight fighter in UFC history, has decided to move up the heavyweight division, hinted that he might be fighting the greatest heavyweight fighter the UFC has ever seen for his debut fight in the division. Predictably, people are left confused as to who he is referring to, but, well, there are only so many people that he could be referring to. In today's video, we will be discussing who Jon Jones might be facing in his heavyweight division debut. Stay tuned. First, who is Jon Jones' mystery opponent? Jones, the former two-time UFC light heavyweight champion, did not give away a lot of details when he posted on Twitter if anyone would be up to watch the GOAT, greatest of all time, of the heavyweight division go up against the GOAT of the light heavyweight division. Despite him not specifying who he was referring to, the UFC fans and analysts have had their say over who could potentially be the fighter Jones referred to. One of the foremost names on the list of potential opponents is that of Stipe Miocic, the two-time heavyweight champion who, as of now, holds the record for the most total successful defenses of the UFC Heavyweight Championship with 4, and also the most consecutive successful defenses with 3. Not only is Miocic's stellar record a reason for him being considered, it is also the fact that in the past, Jones and Miocic have publicly called out each other on numerous occasions. Jones has yet to compete since successfully defending his light heavyweight title against Dominick Reyes in early 2020 at the UFC 247 Jones. He voluntarily gave up the title after a pay dispute with UFC president Dana White, saying that he was giving up the title to move up to the heavyweight division. Contentious negotiations with the UFC, along with a recent arrest for domestic disturbance in Las Vegas, he pleaded no contest to the charges, have meant that his heavyweight debut itself has been delayed. As for Miocic, news has been scarce in regards to when he might be seen competing again ever since Francis Ngannou defeated him last March to become the new UFC heavyweight champion. The next name on the potential opponent's list is none other than Ngannou himself, recently having defended his title at the UFC 270 against Ciryl Gane. The reigning UFC heavyweight champion has publicly discussed a fight with Jones and could very well be the GOAT in question. Despite these reasons, few people think that it will be Ngannou, considering the fact that his status with UFC is currently up in the air ever since he has expressed a desire to have a new contract that would have a clause allowing him to pursue boxing opportunities should any come up. And to compound the issue, Ngannou will also be undergoing a knee surgery that is tentatively expected to keep him away from the octagon for almost all of 2022. Now, let's dive into Jones' UFC career highlights. UFC 165, Jones vs. Gustafsson. Any compilation that discusses the best fights of Jon "Bones" Jones' career would be certainly incomplete with his UFC 165 bout against Alexander Gustafsson, which has since then been called one of the greatest light heavyweight bouts in the history of the sport. Bones went up against the persistent Gustafsson in a title defense bout, with many considering Gustafsson to finally be the person who would stop the ferocious Jones. The match lived up to its high billing, and Gustafsson certainly proved the UFC community right by bringing the fight to Jones and refusing to be beaten back. The match was head-to-head even after 4 rounds with no apparent leader at that point, and it would have gone down to the final round, which would then decide the winner. This is where the quality that separated Jones from the rest in his weight class became apparent. Despite having been pushed to the limit in 4 brutal rounds, Jones' stamina was evident, and the relatively inexperienced Gustafsson clearly had almost none left. Jones, trying to take advantage of his stamina, tried to finish off the fight before the final bell and take the fight to its decision within the octagon with a flurry of kicks and punches, but the title challenger persisted and stayed on his feet, surviving just long enough to make sure that the decision rested entirely on the judges. In the end, after being pushed to the limit, Jones was successful in defending his title by a meager 2-point margin, getting a score of 49-47 from the judges. UFC 128, Jones vs. Mauricio Rua. How do we talk about the illustrious career of one of the finest light heavyweight champions in UFC history without listing the match that got him the gold belt wrapped around his waist? At the tender age of 23, Jones had just handed Ryan Bader the first loss of his professional career when he was informed immediately after the bout that because Rashad Evans had suffered an injury, Jones would be replacing him in the title challenge against Mauricio "Shogun" Rua, the UFC light heavyweight champion with a chance to become the youngest UFC champion in history. Despite having just a month's notice, Jones brought his A game to the bout, and unfazed by the defending champion, he used his incredible reach to his advantage and left Shogun absolutely baffled, who could come up with nothing to turn the tide in his favor. By the 3rd round, Jones had taken complete control of the bout when he landed a heavy body blow to Rua's midsection, and the referee had to step in and stop the fight to prevent Rua getting injured. This meant that Jon Jones had claimed his first UFC belt and became the youngest champion in UFC history. UFC 182, Jones vs. Cormier. Defending champion Jones Jones and Olympian Cormier, two of the best in the weight class, each with a near-perfect record with just one loss. In Jones' case, that too was contentious, and White believes that Jones did not deserve to lose, were booked to fight each other, with many people believing that this bout would be the end of Jones' reign at the top. Cormier, who had been a fighter in the heavyweight weight class, dropped down a division in order to become eligible to go up against Bones. The match was set up interestingly with over a year-long wait for the fight. Jones went on a spree of insults and disparaging remarks about Cormier, so much so that by the time the fight came around, it was no longer a fight about becoming the UFC lightweight champion and dominate each other in the octagon, but instead it became personal. All the experts and analysts had said that the obvious strategy for Jones to win the fight would have to be using his incredible reach that had not failed him in any fight as an advantage over Cormier's more wrestling style of fighting, but appeared that Jones had a point to prove, and so he gave the crowd a fight worth their money, an uncharacteristic dogfight, and put his mind to winning the takedown battle. Perhaps one of his most impressive victories, because Jones, who many had said would lose for sure, had walked away the winner from the octagon by beating Cormier at his own game and not going for his trademark style of fighting, hence proving that no matter who the opponent he went up against was, he was one of the finest light heavyweight fighters in UFC history, and he would not be beaten that easily. UFC 140, Jones vs. Machida. Bones was set to fight his title defense bout against Phil Davis at UFC 140, but because he was still recovering from an injury, Lyoto the Dragon Machida got the chance to step in and take his shot at the dominant force that was the light heavyweight champion. Coming into the title bout, the Dragon had never lost a UFC bout by a TKO, technical knockout, submission, and many believe that he might just be the one who could unlock Jones' fighting style and take the belt from UFC's youngest ever champion. The first round was a dead rubber of sorts, nothing separating the two fighters in terms of agility, stamina, or skill, but that would not remain the case for long, as the situation quickly took a turn for the worse for Machida in the second round. The Dragon suffered a wound on his forehead that left him bleeding into his eye and had to be checked on by the cage-side doctor before the officials would let the fight continue. Any chance Machida probably had of gaining an advantage and toppling the defending champion was lost in that key moment. When the fight resumed, it did not take long for Jones to take advantage of his opponent's injury and lock him in a chokehold, holding it until the Dragon lost consciousness. That's a wrap for this video. Will we see Jones go up against Miocic or Ngannou, or will there be a surprise third fighter? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.